Sometimes danger isn't lurking in a dark alley or behind a stranger's closed door. Sometimes it hides in the very place meant to be a safe haven. What if those who are supposed to protect you are the very ones who betray you the most? This is the story of a young girl who placed her trust in her foster family, a family that failed to protect her and instead sealed her fate. This is the heartbreaking and shocking story of Tiali Palmer. Housevil, true crime involving family. Every family has secrets, any family can cross the line. Hi, I'm Matt. Welcome to Housevil, where we uncover the darkest family secrets. Today, we delve into the tragic case of Tiali Palmer, a 12-year-old girl brutally murdered by the man who was supposed to ensure her safety and well-being, her foster father, Rick Thorburn. What started as a missing persons case quickly spiraled into one of Australia's most horrifying family tragedies. What happened inside the Thorburn household? Why did Tiali have to die? And how did the authorities finally uncover the truth? Tiali Alyssa Rose Palmer was a lively and courageous girl. Despite a tough childhood and life in foster care, she still had dreams and hopes for the future. She loved dancing, had a passion for animals, and was known for her bright and energetic personality. Her friends and teachers adored her, describing her as someone who could light up any room with her smile. However, her life was tragically cut short in October 2015, when she disappeared and was found dead days later on the banks of the Pimpama River in Queensland, Australia. The Thorburn family seemed like an ordinary foster home at first glance. Rick and Julian Thorburn took in multiple foster children and presented themselves to the outside world as loving, caring parents. They attended community events, spoke about the importance of foster care, and built a reputation of being charitable and compassionate. But behind closed doors, it became evident that this family harbored secrets, dark, destructive secrets that would ultimately lead to murder. On the morning of October 30th, 2015, everything seemed like a regular school day. Tiali left her house as usual, dressed in her school uniform, with her backpack slung over her shoulders. But she never made it to school. When she didn't return home, panic set in. Her foster parents, Rick and Julian, portrayed themselves as heartbroken and deeply concerned for their missing daughter. The community quickly responded, organizing search parties and sharing her image across social media. Flyers were distributed, and the police launched an extensive investigation, urging anyone with information to come forward. 6 days later, the devastating discovery was made. Tiali's lifeless body was found on the banks of the Pimpama River. Authorities were left with a chilling mystery: who could have taken the life of a 12-year-old girl in such a brutal manner. The police initially focused on external suspects, questioning people in the area and examining known offenders. Could it have been a stranger, a predator lurking nearby, or was the truth even more horrifying? As investigators pieced together the timeline, inconsistencies in the Thorburn family's story began to emerge. Witnesses reported seeing Rick Thorburn's car near the river on the day of Tiali's disappearance. Further scrutiny of the family's actions revealed an unusual level of secrecy and avoidance of police questioning. Then came the biggest red flag: the Thorburns suddenly removed all traces of Tiali from their home. Her belongings, photographs, and any reminders of her presence were swiftly discarded. Slowly but surely, attention turned toward the very home where Tiali should have been safe, the Thorburn household. It took nearly a year for the truth to come to light. The police continued their investigation, analyzing forensic data, tracking movements, and interviewing multiple witnesses. The pressure mounted as authorities scrutinized every detail of the Thorburn family story, looking for inconsistencies. What ultimately cracked the case was a confession from Trent Thorburn, Rick and Julian's son. He admitted to a friend that he had an inappropriate relationship with Tiali, and that his father had murdered her to keep this secret from being exposed. The friend, disturbed by the revelation, went to the authorities, setting off a chain of events that would eventually lead to the arrest of the entire Thorburn family. On September 20th, 2016, Rick Thorburn and his family members were arrested. The details that emerged were horrifying. The investigation revealed that Rick Thorburn had strangled his foster daughter, driven miles away with her lifeless body in his car, and then dumped her by the river under the cover of darkness. He disposed of any potential evidence, including Tiali's belongings, while forcing his family to uphold a web of lies. For months, they lived under the constant fear of being caught, rehearsing their fabricated stories, yet maintaining a facade of normalcy to the outside world. During questioning, Rick Thorburn remained eerily calm and emotionless, refusing to admit to any wrongdoing. However, forensic analysis and inconsistencies in the family statements soon unraveled their carefully constructed deception. Investigators discovered that Trent had confided in multiple friends about his relationship with Tiali, and digital records traced his conversations back to the days leading up to her disappearance. Meanwhile, Rick's internet history showed disturbing searches related to crime scene disposal and forensic detection methods, further incriminating him in the act. As investigators pressed further, Julian Thorburn eventually cracked under pressure, revealing more details about the events leading up to the murder. She admitted that Rick had become increasingly volatile after learning about Trent's relationship with Tiali. Fearing legal consequences for his son and the potential loss of their foster care payments, Rick saw no other option but to silence her permanently. Julian's admission led to further scrutiny of Joshua Thorburn, who, despite initially standing by his father, eventually admitted that he had been forced to help conceal evidence and mislead investigators. When confronted with the overwhelming evidence, the Thorburns initially insisted they knew nothing, but one by one, their lies began to crumble. Julian, Trent, and Joshua Thorburn were charged with perjury and attempting to obstruct justice, their once tight-knit web of deception now shattered beyond repair. Meanwhile, Rick Thorburn, the orchestrator of this horrific crime, was finally forced to face the full weight of his actions. Rick Thorburn, the man who had once been entrusted with the care of vulnerable children, was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Tiali Palmer. His manipulative and cold-hearted actions shocked the nation. The courtroom was silent as the judge read out his sentence, emphasizing the cruelty of his actions and the devastating betrayal of trust. It was a moment of both justice and deep sorrow. Justice for Tiali, but sorrow for a life that was cut far too short. Julian Thorburn was sentenced to 18 months in prison for her role in covering up the crime, though many felt this was too lenient considering her involvement. Trent Thorburn received a 4-year sentence for incest, perjury, and attempting to pervert the course of justice, while Joshua Thorburn was given a 3-month sentence for his role in the cover-up. The public was outraged that the sentences were not harsher, with many feeling that the entire family should have been held more accountable for their collective deception. During the trial, Cindy Palmer, Tiali's biological mother, broke down in tears as she listened to the horrifying details of how her daughter's life was taken. The pain in her voice was palpable as she addressed the court, expressing the unimaginable grief she had endured since her daughter's disappearance. The weight of her words echoed throughout the courtroom, leaving many in tears. She spoke of Tiali's dreams, her kindness, and the injustice of it all. Outside the courtroom, protesters gathered, demanding stricter regulations on foster care placements and more thorough background checks for foster families. Advocates and lawmakers pushed for legal reforms, calling for more oversight in the foster care system to prevent such tragedies from happening again. The case exposed significant flaws in the system, raising concerns about how vulnerable children are placed in homes without sufficient safeguards. The sentencing did little to ease the pain felt by Tiali's family and the broader community. As Rick Thorburn was led away in handcuffs, his expression remained cold and devoid of remorse, a chilling reminder of the depths of his cruelty. Meanwhile, Julian, Trent, and Joshua faced the repercussions of their deceit, forever branded as complicit in a crime that shook the nation to its core. The trial was more than just a legal proceeding, it was a defining moment for child protection in Australia. The sheer brutality of the case forced a reckoning, leading to policy discussions and national outrage. Many questioned how someone like Rick Thorburn had been allowed to take in foster children in the first place, and whether enough had been done to protect Tiali before it was too late. The Thorburn family's lies and manipulations had finally been exposed, but at an unimaginable cost. Tiali Palmer's life was stolen, and no amount of justice could bring her back. Her case remains one of the most harrowing reminders of the vulnerability of children in the foster care system, a story of betrayal, loss, and a desperate plea for reform. The murder of Tiali Palmer sent shockwaves through Australia and ignited a national debate about child protection laws. The public was horrified that such a tragedy could unfold under the watch of a supposedly regulated foster care system, and advocacy groups pushed for immediate action, demanding thorough background checks and psychological evaluations for prospective foster parents. Authorities responded by tightening screening processes, implementing more frequent welfare checks, and enforcing stricter regulations to prevent similar tragedies from happening in the future. Despite these efforts, nothing could erase the devastating loss of Tiali's young life. Her case exposed major flaws in the child welfare system, highlighting the vulnerability of children placed in foster care. It led to increased awareness and prompted discussions in government institutions about the need for reform. Experts in child psychology and law enforcement collaborated to propose stronger oversight, ensuring that foster children would have more avenues to report abuse or neglect. The tragedy also inspired a wave of public outrage, with communities rallying to demand justice and systemic change. Tiali's memory became a symbol for foster children across the country. Schools, community centers, and advocacy groups launched initiatives in her name, educating the public about the importance of vigilance and early intervention in child abuse cases. The Australian government introduced a dedicated task force to monitor foster care placements more closely, ensuring that reports of mistreatment were taken seriously and investigated thoroughly. For Tiali's biological mother, Cindy Palmer, the pain remained unbearable. She fought tirelessly for justice, using her grief as fuel to push for change. She participated in awareness campaigns, spoke at events, and worked alongside policymakers to ensure that no other child would suffer the same fate. She called for reforms that would allow biological parents to have more insight into the well-being of their children placed in foster care, an effort that gained widespread support from other families who had lost loved ones to similar failures of the system. The trial and subsequent sentencing did little to ease the pain felt by Tiali's family and the broader community. The scars left by the Thorburns' deception and brutality would never fully heal. Yet, in the wake of tragedy, a movement for change took root, one that sought to protect and empower the most vulnerable children in society. Tiali's case serves as a grim reminder that not all monsters hide in the dark. Sometimes they live within the very walls meant to keep children safe. Her story will never be forgotten, and her legacy has led to vital changes in the foster care system. The lessons learned from her tragic fate continue to shape policies, ensuring that her death was not in vain. A young girl, betrayed by those she trusted most, lost her life to a crime driven by secrecy and shame. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to subscribe to Housevil for more stories that reveal the dark truths behind family bonds. Share your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.